Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Automated. We're back after a brief delay, and this is our podcast where we talk every week about robots, how they hurt us, and why we love them so much. I, of course, am your host, Stefan Selzoxmacher, and with me is a man wearing a t-shirt that I've worn the majority of this week, but I'm not wearing today because I'm too classy. It says, Paul Y. Math Robotics.
Just clarification, same type of shirt, not the exact same shirt. We're not at that level of startup quite yet. Tune back in next week. Maybe we will be. But it's been a very crazy several weeks. I apologize for missing a few episodes.
Yeah, I think in the last couple of weeks, we had a forced office move. We had a baby and a bunch of different robots.
Yeah, none of which were more intelligent than the baby.
I like to think of that as a new neural network you've been training. How's it going so far? How's the training data?
Well, we'll know in about 6 months when it becomes a human instead of a late-stage fetus, basically. There's a really great blog post I shared with Stefan about what it's like as an engineer or data person to see a child. And you kind of think it's like pregnancy and then baby, but it's actually pregnancy and then pregnant baby that people can see for a few months.
The
and
baby's
then actual
pregnant?
Baby. No, it's
Is
just...
this like, are we in Alabama or something?
No, it's just that this is now an infant that everybody can see, but it's still in the same developmental stage as it was when it was in the stomach. So lots of craziness.
So that being said, this is our weekly podcast, Automated, after a couple of weeks absence. We tend to have two different parts of the podcast. The first, we play a game where we simulate starting a startup. And the second, where we talk about some issue in robotics. And Ilya, what are we talking about this week?
Well, there's a few kind of smorgasbord of topics that's happened in the last few little while. We have the story about Waymo shutting down their trucking division, which is shocking to Stefan and I.
We have been hearing that this was true for 6 months and just haven't talked about it publicly.
And have also assumed it was true even before we started hearing about it. We can talk about why. And I think we're going to dip a little bit into humanoid robotics and why that's an exciting field and why investors are kind of very excited about that right now.
I guess we're doing the double whammy, which is going to make it all the harder to ask what we're talking about next week.
Exactly.
And with that being said, all right, so for our game, what we're going to do is we're going to simulate starting a robotics company. Ilya is going to pitch me on some field of business that we should work in by drawing a card. This is actually one of the few things we found when we moved. Yeah. And then I'll pick a technology that I really want to use on it.
All right. So I picked the business card education, which should be very exciting.
Jesus. I think just education and tech don't go together. Just let alone robots.
Good things always come out of that mix.
Yeah, I mean, like, let's pick something besides education. I feel like I fundamentally don't believe that any tech will ever be sold in education.
But that's all the more fun. Come on, let's give it a shot.
All right.
Listeners, we reserve the right to change it midway through, but we'll give it a shot.
All right. So, the card that I have at the top is stereo cameras for depth.
Perfect.
So, stereo camera robots.
Yep.
This can't be a static camera on the wall for depth in an education environment. Presumably, we have to use stereo cameras because we don't have enough budget for any other sensors in the schoolyard setting.
Well, I'm thinking, the one place robots actually did make sense in education was there was this whole push towards telepresence for kids who are too ill to attend classes. Yep. And it's one of those
because who has a lot of money to spend on robots?
Yeah.
School systems, especially for special needs kids.
Or children who are ill also have lots of money to spend on this problem.
Made for a great episode of Bob's Burgers, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we're basically building a telepresence robot, but that's not particularly interesting. Will be a more interesting case.
I think so. A thing that was true in college, I think the engineering school had this, not the lowly business school, was they had these clickers. So you could input an answer.
Yep.
So you bought some probably $400 microcontroller with a fairing on it, and you use that to answer multiple choice questions in class to prove your attendance. I think that clickers that's really hard tech. It's very expensive. We should use stereo cameras to understand which answer out of 3 or 4 or whatever fingers up is what people are asking.
And more particularly, it has to be a robot stereo camera, right?
Yeah.
So what you need is
well, if there's occlusions, the robot needs to travel up the lecture hall or drive to the back of the class.
You know what's definitely cheaper and more reliable than just putting a bunch of cameras up It's one camera on a guide wire that flies around the room.
Oh no, not on a guide wire. I'm thinking it has wheels.
Oh, even better.
Or actually treads, like really high powered treads, like some friends of ours, so it can fly up and down the stairs. Now it might like decimate your laptop that you left in the aisle, but that's the price of education.
Or the person who happened to come late and is sitting in the aisle because there's no seats left.
Yeah, I mean they were asking for it. They should have shown up on time.
Yeah, that's a good way to insure it.
Yeah.
But I mean, on a more serious note, like in robotics, we do try to teach people how to build robots. Mm-hmm. And I think stereo cameras are one of those inherently comprehensible sensors that you can teach somebody pretty easily.
Yep.
Like you have two eyes, you triangulate this way. We're doing the same thing here.
And stereo cameras are really useful in a lot of settings. There's a lot of ways that they're a great sensor. Although like I feel like people often want to use stereo cameras because they feel like LiDARs are expensive. I feel like it's half the justification I've ever heard.
And then you find out that the cost of the cameras that are comparable quality is high.
Yep.
And then the compute to actually use that data is even higher.
Yeah, but listen, like Moore's Law,
yeah,
compute will be eventually free. Don't worry about it.
That's always my favorite comment is like, well, humans do it. Like, yeah, human brain. It's unbelievably powerful.
So here's what I think the use case is. So you have like one of these big lecture halls from one of those land grant colleges. You have like 500 students. The teacher asks a question, and because it's a stereo camera, the robot can drive around the lecture for probably 5 minutes. So the students have to keep their fingers up for the entirety of the time.
Exactly.
Can record the answer that they selected with their fingers, and can also capture their face. So you can correlate, kind of which students are doing well.
And you need stereo vision because what if those engineering students brought cardboard cutouts of themselves?
Yep.
That just stick up their little cardboard cutout hand every once in a while? That's why.
Yep. And like the extra expense of this robot outweighs the cost of that hack.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's been happening many single times ever in history.
Okay, so to build this, so we probably need it to be about human height, I feel like. To be able to go up the rows, maybe not have to go up all the rows and be able to see over people. Maybe actually it should be a little bit taller than a person.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like one of those wheel setups that are good at handling stairs.
Oh, no, we got to go wacky on this one.
Why?
One of my favorite.
I feel like we're already wacky on this one.
We got to go even wackier.
Okay.
One of my favorite locomotion methods that I really want to build in spare time that I don't have is, have you ever seen a robot that bounces on a single ball? It's a great idea, right? If you think of it, like in theory, you have a sphere and your robot has 3 motors on the sphere that can rotate itself in its own center of gravity around the sphere in any direction. And it's amazing because it's
BB-8.
It BB-8 but taller.
Yeah.
It's a ball with a large cylinder.
We want a larger BB-8.
Yeah. It actually becomes easier the taller you are because your pendulum moment of inertia is lower, so you can control better. But not only is it a ball, it's also a ball with a spring in it, with a big jackhammer above it. So when it needs to get up those little steps,
it just
can
jumps.
do these little hops up the stairway.
Well, how is the top pendulum actually connected to the ball?
It's not.
It's not at all.
The ball is
so like when like some asshole student, I mean all students are good, especially me, knock it over once and by accident, and then like it would be done forever.
It wouldn't be done forever, but it'd be done until somebody helped it get back up.
I mean, if it fell hard enough, if this is a 6-foot pole on top of a bouncy ball, I think someone kicks it once and it falls, a flight of stairs.
That is the downfall, if you will, of these ball robots.
That's the cost of doing business. That's why education is so expensive in America.
No, I mean, you sign up the university for a plan to replace their hardware at only 120% cost every time it breaks.
Yep. Yep. And I mean, like, let's just skipping ahead. We got some stereo cameras on top. We got the ball. We got this whole pendulum thing. We're probably looking at a $200,000 robot here.
You could get away cheaper. No, I'm gonna disagree on this one.
Okay.
Because the benefit of the ball bot is that you only have to have 3 locomotion motors.
Okay.
All right, so 3 moderately powerful motors, an IMU, a computer, and a few stereo cameras.
And battery.
And battery. The battery's, it's like a few $100. You can
probably need an energy dense battery that is light. I think that might be expensive.
It can be heavy. In fact, it's better if it's heavy. In this big column, the bottom is heavy, the top is light. Again, it makes it an easy pendulum problem.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, you could probably get away with like 30K, 40K.
Okay, all right.
So like the average grad student
I mean,
salary per year.
if you think about it, if those grad students are buying 500 of these $400 clickers, like you pretty quickly pay for this pendulum bot.
That's right. For
Yeah.
the all 10 minutes that it works.
Yeah.
Until it falls over that first time and is done for immediately. So we just wrap it in bubble wrap. Or it has those, in Japan, they've been deploying these little belts for older folks. And if they fall down, it's an airbag that inflates and protects
There
them.
we go.
We just install one of those around the robot.
You know what would make it even better is if the jerk student kicks it while it's bouncing up the stairs, and then there's an explosion as the airbags go off.
And just knock
on like some other student breaking every bone in their face. But hey, the $30,000 robot is okay.
Yeah. A lot of grad students would be okay with that idea. There's a good XKCD comic about that, about like, anytime anybody proposes a crazy robot, the answer is always, I guess it could be useful for search and rescue.
I mean, how precise do you think this ball bouncing is?
Horrendously imprecise.
Yeah, like if the robot is 6 to 7 feet tall, the ball must be, I don't know, 2 feet in diameter? 3 feet in diameter?
Something like that. Something to make it reasonable.
Okay, like, is it precise to a foot?
I think if you could, rolling, it should be pretty accurate.
Oh, yeah, but like
bouncing,
this is mostly bouncing.
Yeah,
Mostly bouncing
I
up the
think
stairs.
you'd be incredibly good at controls if you could get it to within like a foot or two. Yeah.
Okay.
That would be a challenge.
So, like, assuming the stairwell is ADA compliant, which, I don't know if that works on stairways, then, like, let's say you're medium at controls. Ideally, we can get to the next step. Every time we're going up a flight, up a stair, we're taking a calculated risk that everything's going to go horrendously.
Oh, it's perfect, because if you think about it, if it's on one step and it jumps and it misses, the ball lands right on the edge of the next step. And just inertia and compression of this rubber ball launches the thing like a rocket at 45 degrees right back down.
So it's gonna take a solid 20 minutes to make its way around the classroom with a lot of tragedies.
Yeah, exactly. With a lot of casualties. Right?
Yeah, okay.
A lot of airbag induced casualties.
Now, like with the constant jumping up and down, how's that gonna affect our stereo cam, facial recognition pipeline?
See, I thought you were going to ask a much more reasonable question of how's that going to affect the students trying to learn anything.
But
no, that's irrelevant.
Listen, I was a business major.
What learning?
Yeah, it was a pretty laid back experience.
Right. So the trick in robotics with cameras is if you get a global shutter camera. Mm-hmm. So they tend to be more expensive, and they tend to be lower resolution because the world hasn't needed them as much.
Are there many stereo global shutter cameras?
You'd build it yourself.
Oh,
so almost,
okay.
Yeah.
So you also get to be a sensor company.
Oh yeah.
That's good. That's good.
There's a
and like, why not while you're at it be Robo TA as a service? So like, let's just go full stack.
I mean, I think we're missing the bigger picture. It's a robot that beats people up. It's literally a bouncer.
Yeah.
Like a club bouncer.
Yeah, I think that would make for a great club experience.
Yeah, exactly.
You're at the nightclub, you're waiting in line,
and you get beaten up by a robot.
Yeah, the robot falls on you, and you're covered in blood as you're trying to go look good and procreate.
That's the way forward. Absolutely. But yeah, back to the cameras.
I think this is going to make for the stupidest Terminator movie there ever was.
Wasn't there a movie about like a tire that kills people? I think one step above that. Just a single step.
Sarah Connor's just like, do you hear that? Yeah, that's the robot 4 miles away. Oh yeah, let's start walking. We're good.
Slowly trundling towards
you.
So in cameras, I think Zed is now coming out with global shutter cameras.
Okay.
I find this really funny transition where almost universally companies that do cameras for robotics, drone cameras, Intel, Oak cameras that we use, Zed, everyone that I've ever seen, always starts with non-global shutter cameras.
Yyep, and then they realize that the life is...
yeah, it's fine. And then they realize, like, holy crap, it's really not fine. It really doesn't work unless you have global shutter. Because what happens is that as your camera is getting vibrated up and down, your normal camera sensor, like what you have on your cell phone...
It's just a rolling...
It's a rolling shutter effect. So if you ever take a photo of a fast-moving object, like a fan in your house...
or me running.
Sure. I mean... I'll call that. Then you'll get this like smeared view because the shot is not going to be taken entirely. But a global shutter camera takes every pixel at once. So it doesn't matter how fast either the camera or the object is moving. It's taking the shot, plus or minus the speed of light, kind of. So it will get you a crisp shot. So there's a few manufacturers that have started to make them, but it's just funny. Every single one of them goes through this weird development cycle.
So like, you start this company thinking you could do it with a rolling shutter. You'd end up becoming a sensor company, as well as the primary controls investigator on bouncing balls. And like maybe in 8 to 14 years, with $200 million of venture raised, you could be at like $1 million a year of revenue.
And you'll pivot to making humanoids. So on that note, what are we calling this thing?
I think it's a almost like a play on BB-8, like TA-8.
TA-8. TA hate. TA hates you physically.
Or T8.
T8. It's one of the Terminator series that was just not very successful.
I think that one was direct to VHS.
Yeah. All right.
And with that, let's talk about some robot news. Oh, actually, why don't you share the news, because you're the one who your comment on it in our Slack is why I even learned about it.
About the superconductor.
About Waymo.
I'm so excited about superconductors. I'm sorry.
There's some big superconductor news. I have not read about it. It's been an early study that has not been repeated
replicated.
Yet. So next week, when theoretically it will have been replicated or disproven, then maybe we'll talk about it.
By the time this podcast comes out, I'll either be emotionally wrecked or probably the podcast won't matter anymore because humanity will have changed. We'll find out. We'll find out next week. What do you think is more likely? But yeah, so Waymo announced that they're shutting down their trucking division, which we have had very strong suspicions of.
We have been hearing about from insiders and outsiders and nearsiders and left-siders and right-siders for months.
I'm pretty sure we even mentioned this on the podcast, where when we went to CES, I took a look at it and I realized there's like $0.5 to $1.5 million of sensors on there.
I'm pretty sure before then, I had heard back when Waymo announced some layoffs in February, I heard it was all of the trucking team. And I think I had heard that was the plan, even last year, maybe. Congrats to Kristen Korosek at TechCrunch and the Autonicast for finally getting people on the record to mention it.
To actually say it.
Apparently she'd been looking for someone on the record for a while. Essentially, I think there's two ways you can spin this. One is, that's ridiculous. Why would they kill trucks when trucks are such a likely path to get something done? On the other hand, it's obvious when you think about the OpenAI threat to Google and a research lab within a research lab.
It's that. I think obviously the larger funding question has had a role to play here. I know Waymo was not cut off. This is all unofficial news, obviously. But Waymo wasn't getting the Alphabet money anymore. And so they went to outside investors. I think they raised something like $3.2 billion.
But I've also heard they spend like $1 billion, $1.5 billion a year.
Bingo. Like, you don't raise that kind of money without some reason to spend it. And if their investment state is the same as everybody else's investment state right now, it could be just we can't afford to keep losing money like this with no more investment money coming in.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting about this is when you start a company, one of the primary stupid questions investors ask is why doesn't Google just start this? Or how, or kind of more differently, when you prove that this is an interesting market, how will you prevent Google from doing the same thing better and eating your lunch? And when I had an autonomous trucking company, that was a scary question for me, especially when I learned that it was true. And what is interesting about this, I think, for anyone who's working on a smaller initiative than a multi-billion-dollar Waymo project, is that you really can do things that Google can't do.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of reason to say that, maybe the Waymo Via team was the best part of the Waymo business, and they still shut it down.
Yeah. And we've talked about this also before, about the difference between working on robotics at a large company or a startup. Mm-hmm. But I think ultimately with a large company and large backing, you have the $3 billion of funding, you better spend it on something. And so,
but also I feel like in a startup, you see the chaos. In a large company, there's the same amount of chaos. It's just 14 layers away from you.
Yeah, your average frontline engineer is not seeing the higher level metrics coming in.
They just wake up one day and get reassigned, or wake up one day and their email laptop doesn't log in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's always fun. You just don't see the higher level questions of, well, what the heck are we going to do with this money, and how are we actually going to make money on this project?
So I posted about this, and somebody responded like, "Why wouldn't they just sell the business?" And
That's
I
a
don't know,
great question.
Ilya, like, thinking of your ClearPath days, thinking of your Amazon days, why not just like package up this one robotic business and sell it to, a CH Robinson or an XPO or some large traditional trucking company that maybe has recently rolled out a new flavor of Oracle?
Yeah, it's funny. It's one of those very strange catch-22s you get into, where you've made it so large that if you sell it, you have to sell it for such a high price that nobody can afford it.
Yeah.
Right? Like nobody can spend $3 billion acquiring this thing,
Yep.
especially if it doesn't work. Right?
Yeah, I mean, when I was trying to sell Starsky, I had a trucking investment banker who looked at me and was like, you need to make a proposal for me that will make it so that some trucking company can buy you for $15 million, invest another $15 million, and then you're profitable.
Good luck.
Yeah, like that's not how robots work.
Yeah, and the economies here are even worse. You need to make it so you can buy this segment for $1 billion. Make it so that it's profitable with another $1 billion, and like, good luck. Like nobody in their right mind would make that purchase. And furthermore, for Google, their internal incentives isn't so much on or Alphabet or Waymo, any of these
Whatever
companies.
you want to call that thing.
Yeah, whatever you want to call this beast. They're not as driven by the particular keeping the lights on kind of metrics as a startup would be. And so for them, the logistics and complexity of supporting a purchase and transferring the IP and disentangling the million-plus lines of code from their own internal systems would be.
I mean, the disentangling bit is interesting in the least because I'm sure with Robotaxi doesn't share 100% of the same code base, but it's probably all the same dev tools.
Yeah.
It's probably 40% of the same code base.
Yeah, similar sensors are shared between the
Yep.
two. I'm sure
sensors that Google doesn't want to sell to anyone else.
Well, even more interesting story. Google sold the Honeycomb LiDAR for, I don't know, under a year. I'm probably wrong, but we can look it up. But
only if you didn't work in autonomous vehicles.
Yep, exactly. And when I first saw that, I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then I thought back to Intel and every other player who sells robotic sensors and then kills it off immediately.
You can rely on me until you rely on me.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, that kind of purchase would have been unbelievably improbable in a lot of ways.
Complicated and unappealing.
Yeah, and maybe an acqui-hire, but Google is very jealous of their own.
Google's the acqui-hirer.
Exactly.
I mean, I think they took most of the good people to work on driving on the highway for Waymo.
Or search.
Yeah.
Right? Like to other right? Like here's your pipeline for good engineers. Go work on search.
Yeah. So I guess a key question of mine is they're going to put this thing on the shelf for 3 months, 3 years,
Eternity.
a decade. Eternity.
Yeah.
But at some point in the future, they've decided, hey, maybe trucks are the best on-road thing to automate. We have a code base. Let's flip the on switch on again and let's get back to it. What's that look like?
Well, Google's pretty famous for using its own internal build tools. And they do, to their credit, they open source them. They try to get other people to use them. But they're also famously Byzantine, even to internal Googlers. If you're a frontline, especially in the robotics field, a frontline dev at Google, you have no idea how your library linker works or your compiler works. Like it is 12 levels of abstraction away from what you do. And so the likelihood of them unwrapping this thing and even getting it to compile first time would be pretty low, much less than actually reusing any of it because of the movement forward in sensor technology, compute, standards of communication, all that kind of stuff. I mean, one of the good things that I quite like about ROS and that we follow is that ROS forces itself to keep up with the Ubuntu release schedule. And so it keeps code rot from setting in because you're constantly updating to catch up to new standards. And it feels, if you're not a software developer, it feels like a waste. It feels like, oh, just write the software once and don't touch it, which doesn't work, right? It works. It works in one universe in particular, and that is on Windows, because Windows spends incredible amounts of effort to backward compatible all their stuff. So it's nothing short of a miracle that you can run software written in 1992 on Windows 11 and it somehow works. Like that is shocking. And that is like, you know, that is some percentage, like, I don't know, random guess, like 50% of the work that Windows team does is just backwards compatibility stuff, if not more, if not 70%. So that works in that universe. But in practically all other software development, as soon as you get one version behind, you have to update how your libraries work. You have to update what drivers you're using. And the likelihood of them getting anything functional out of this is pretty much zero.
To quantify that, I guess the question is, so if they had announced the end of the program and the next day they announced it's back, you know, maybe they would have lost a week.
Sure, yeah.
Or whatever. Let's assume that 75% of the people on Waymo trucking are either already at a new company or will be within the next 12 months. So the churn is high.
Yep.
At what point in time, when do you think it becomes so hard to turn the lights back on chronologically that it's basically junk code?
Oh, you're asking me to look into a crystal ball a little bit?
Well, not so much. Like more like, you know, in terms of the rate of new versions of software and this, that, and the other, like if they turned it, if this program was functionally dead in February, is it already unrecoverable? Is it unrecoverable in 6 months? Is it unrecoverable in 3 years? When does it become more effort to bring back to life than to just start from scratch?
Yeah. I mean, to give you a rough rule of thumb, every year you're going to have some sort of change in an underlying library that you have to go and rewrite something. And that's 10% effort.
Yep.
But the problem happens when over the years you kind of have this exponential increase in the amount of libraries you depend because...
So it's going to become 10x harder to restart every year.
Exactly. So the first year, not a lot of effort. The second year, 10x effort. The third year, 100x effort.
So given that they've been, if that math is solid and holds, which, you know, it probably is, they've been working on this program for about 4 years or so. Or maybe, I think like 6.
So yeah, I was going to say more than 4.
Yeah.
2017-ish?
I think so.
Yeah, something like that.
So they've been working on this program for 6 years. That means probably 18 months from the end of the program, it's unrecoverable.
Yeah.
Which means 12 months from today, or 12-ish months from today if they actually wound it down in February.
Yeah, if we want to be conservative, let's say 24 months.
Yeah.
24 months from now, that code
is worthless.
Is functionally as a whole is worthless. If there's any particular clever algorithm inside of it, for example, you know, Google publishes a really good nonlinear solver called Series.
Yep.
Series, if there's a series-like thing inside of there, either they've evacuated it already and put it somewhere else, like the robotaxis, or it's just dead and unrecoverable.
So we've talked before about humanoid robots, often making fun of them. But I had an interesting experience in the last, while you were training a new neural net.
That's how polymath people talk about having kids.
So I'm an LP in a small VC fund, and an LP because they're generous enough to take. You know, they told me recently that if I want to put money into their next fund and as small of a check as I invest in, they'd have to charge me additional management fees. So
that's the pain in the ass fee.
Yeah, you've heard of 2 and 20. I'll be paying 2.5 on 20.
Yeah.
But this fund made an investment that I wasn't aware of like 6 to 9 months ago in a humanoid robotics company. To speak broadly and without talking any trash. And the humanoids have been all over the place. A bunch of them have raised, like Figure and I think Archer have raised $100+ million rounds despite being functionally non-existent. And I watched the investment conversation in the Slack channel because that's a cool thing about this fund. And I think I finally understand kind of bad robotics investment. Basically, a GP saw a cool video, and to be fair,
very cool video.
Like really cool.
It reminds me of Westworld.
Yeah.
A lot. Like, the Westworld kind of skeletal robots. That so much.
And
very
just
cool.
Like lost his mind with excitement.
Yeah.
And like, this feels like the future. I am living the future right now. I'm going to write a check. I'm going to ignore the fact that the people who know about hardware are putting up their warning lights. I'm just going to write a check because this is how we're going to make $1 billion.
Yep.
And I think that there's something there that, like, frankly, I've never been good at. And like that, I think most real roboticists are bad at, which is the magic of promising I don't know, the unpromisable.
Yeah.
And I think that might be a big part of this current humanoid robotics boom.
Yeah. I think, it's one of those cases where people extrapolate a little bit beyond what we
Yeah.
can actually do, where they're like, the world is built for humans. Ergo, a robot that looks like a human can function anywhere in the world. Like, sure, both of those statements are true. The catch is, I don't believe we have the technology to build a robot that functions as a human. And, like, very doubtful.
Actually, there was an interesting New Yorker article that came out, I think, like today about humanoid robotics, where one of the things they noted is that the more lifelike a humanoid is, the more frustrated people get with it.
Totally.
When it sucks.
Totally. Oh, so
like if a prongy grasping robot can't grab a bottle,
fine.
That's fine. Like, mechanical things are hard.
Yeah.
But if a human hand looking thing can't grab a bottle, like, what?
So, quick story time. A few of our previous, both Amazon and ClearPath, have put effort into making sure that people understand how dumb the robot is. And both of them came to the same realization. I think it was some research done by Disney, who does a lot of good robotics research, that robots that look childlike are more forgiven by humans. Make it look cutesy, make it have big eyes, make it look confused, and then people don't expect the like godlike, all-knowing being. And they're more forgiving.
The funny thing is, you've told me this before, but I've never landed this. That works in a house.
That works in factories even.
I doubt that that's easy to sell in factories.
So
like, let's say like there's one robot that I often talk about whose creators often listen to this show. So hello, if it's you, where they automate a big scary machine, big giant scary machine with a claw that drives around the forest.
Yeah.
If that had cutesy eyes on it, some lumberjack's going to be like, what is that? Like, I can't rely on that. Like, let's not have this robot. This is a waste of time. This is a work site, not an episode of Bluey.
So, oh, my favorite show. So the way that at least ClearPath does it, if you look at their industrial design, none of this is secret because you could just look at their robots and you'll see it. When an automotor's AMR goes from point A to point B, its headlights kind of turn and look like eyeballs. Not really, because they're just a bar. But it'll kind of look the direction it's going. And if it doesn't know which way to go, it'll look back and forth like it's scanning a room. And just that small cue is enough to communicate immediately to a human, like, it's looking to the right. I know it's going to turn to the right.
I think of that, like, okay, like that with a bar of light, okay.
Yeah.
Like I think it's like Rethink Robotics has the tablet with the kind of cute eyes that do that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I haven't interviewed anyone who works in a factory with one of those arms. But I would struggle if I was a decision maker at that corporate spending $42 million on cute little robot arms that look like they get confused sometimes.
So you're not going to get to interview anyone because Rethink is dead and has been dead for a little while. But yes,
are all the people who work there also dead?
No.
Jeez, I'm pretty sure we could interview somebody.
Yeah, but it's unfortunate because their arms were really fun. But yeah, no, I mean, it's a great question.
I think the challenge here is, I think most people listening to this believe that the early markets for robots are like enterprise.
Yeah.
And like the whole thing with enterprise software is fudging your way through, like, oh yeah, totally, the AI can do that.
Yeah.
That's totally a feature that exists.
Don't worry about these requests going to Bangladesh and being processed by humans.
It's all good. And like that doesn't work with cutesy eyes that are confused.
So I'm overgeneralizing here with the cutesy eyes, but the idea being you want to communicate to your human in some way that humans read natural body language,
where they're not angry.
Just that people trust robots more if they can predict what they're doing, even if what they're doing is dumb.
Yeah.
So if I see it like, oh, it's clearly going to go to the right, even if that plan is ending in a wall, I can at least be like, oh, that's poor robot. It's confused.
Yeah.
Where if it just for no reason suddenly skews towards the wall, I get to be like, oh, what the heck?
Yep.
Nobody expected that. So I think coming back to our topic, kind of a lot of these humanoid robots, and another good one, I'm trying to remember, it was at Autumn, the kind of weird chicken leg looking one. Forgot the name. Anyway, they've been working on that for a while now, and of course Boston Dynamics has their own humanoid robots. The thing about humanoids currently is, not only is our processing power much worse, but also our energy storage is worse, and also our motors are worse, and also our computers are worse.
I mean,
Control
it's why
systems.
like the Toyota humanoid has like a backpack.
Yeah.
Because you need a lot more power and you need somewhere to put it.
Yeah, and like just every element. My comparison I always make is that you're comparing crude mechanical systems like electric motors to literal nanotechnology, which is your muscles.
Yeah.
And you're expecting them to perform similarly, and they're just not going to. No matter, I don't care how good your motor is, it's not going to outperform human muscles pound for pound.
I mean, I guess,
efficiency wise.
You know, I wonder if a way to think about this is if we could make regular dumb machines like a Toyota Prius as efficiently as a human body, what would the size of the Prius be or a motorcycle be?
Oh, well, I mean, it's kind of amazing. If you think about it, you can eat 2,000 calories, which is not like 2,000 calories is a McDonald's meal with a drink, right? Like,
I think half a McDonald's meal.
Sure.
Technically.
Depending what size you're getting, whatever. Like, that is not a very
I think
large...
McDonald's only is served in one size, which is shame.
Oh, man. So that's a very small amount of fuel to run a supercomputer and nanotechnology muscles all day.
Yep.
I think if a Prius was equivalent, just to put it kind of in perspective, I don't know.
House cat?
You mean size-wise?
Yeah.
Well, so the thing that large mechanical systems do have is raw output power.
Yeah.
And they don't get tired.
Yeah.
Right? So that they have going for their day.
Yep.
But if, for example, you instead of powering it with gas, you powered it with food, and you gave it time to digest and store that energy.
Yep.
You could probably decrease the engine bay by 70%.
Okay.
Those are kind of guesses. Like, it's not a complete change.
Yep.
But it's quite a lot smaller.
So it probably, outside of the size of wheels, does look like a house cat motorcycle.
There's a strange thought.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that's useful in this comparison of the incredible efficiency of a human compared to
a humanoid
mechanical
robot.
engineering. Yeah. If in fact we wanted to build a humanoid who happened to be 25 feet tall, this whole like number of problems might go away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, if you want to.
So maybe there is a reason for giant fighting robots.
I wish.
Yep. Gundams.
Yeah. I mean, the nerd in me would love a good excuse for a Gundam, but I can't until the kaiju appear.
Yeah.
I can't really think of a reason we need.
They are
something
coming.
That big.
Yeah.
But from an investment and business standpoint, I really hope and I wish that all of this froth in the humanoid robot market isn't driven by Tesla. But I feel like it probably is driven by Tesla, and that makes me real sad.
No, so I was having lunch with someone the other day who said, the shame of this is that the people doing real work will be overshadowed by the spoof and blah 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 blah. Yeah. However, if there's a solid $5 billion just wasted on humanoid robotics in the next, I don't know, call it 30 months, there will be more progress in the next 30 months than there has been in the last 40 years.
Maybe. My catch on that is, to our previous topic, think about the Waymo trucks.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't know their internal code base, but I would be shocked if they have meaningfully moved the state of the art for autonomous navigation, considering they're not a successful business, right? You've dumped all this money into it, and nothing really has come out of it because there is no there yet with the amount of money you need to put into sensors and compute to make something that could actually feasibly do this. I think the same problem is going to be here. We're going to keep bashing our head against the same problem because there's no way we could build computers small enough or motors efficient enough or batteries powerful enough for this to be meaningfully more useful than treads.
Yeah.
Right? Like, my comment is always, why the hell do you use humanoids in a factory when your floor is flat?
Yep.
You don't need legs on a flat floor.
Yep.
Tires are better in literally every way you can imagine.
Yep.
So why would you ever?
I think someone the other week told me if nature could have evolved a tire, it would have, because tires are just better.
Or just better, literally every way. Speed, efficiency, safety, stability, name it. Like, they're always better. So I think there's going to be a flash, and there's going to be a lot of interest, and there might even be, kind of to this discussion, really pretty Westworld looking designs coming out of this.
Yep.
And maybe some minor investments, but I don't think there'll be a stunning push forward of the state of the art here. I just don't think there's any.
I don't know. See, to disagree, I am of the conclusion that the massive robo-taxi hype led to such an incredible overinvestment in sensors that like we made more progress in the last 5 to 8 years of robotic sensors than we'd probably made in 20 odd years. LiDARs became reliable. They became a real sensor. They became ruggedized. There's now a variety of stereo cameras, HD radars, kind of a thing. I think like kind of fundamentally, like we're actually going to see a slowdown in sensor development because of no more stupidity in like, let's start the 14th LiDAR company because I'm really good at...
Or the 36th LiDAR company.
The 36th LiDAR company whose name starts with an H.
At all of CES.
Yeah, but like, I think similarly, there will be dividends that like end up helping, robotic arms in factories that come out of the craziness we're about to see or that we're seeing in humanoids.
Maybe. The other mistake that I want to caution you on is an arm in a factory does not at all behave like a human. Like the motion planning profile of an arm doing a repetitive industrial task like welding.
Yeah.
If you ever look up a YouTube video, it is utterly alien.
Yeah.
They make these motions that make no sense to a human,
Yep.
but are more efficient to go that way than
Yep.
to actually use what you think would be more efficient as an arm.
Yep.
So I don't know if it'll impact factories particularly.
I mean, I think things like gripping.
Maybe. I'm sorry. I'm being a little bit pessimistic.
Yeah.
But
Right now, you're just annoyed by the hype.
I'm
But I mean, I think
I'm in grumpy old man mode.
Going back to our first topic, as we see Waymo trucks wind down and as we see humanoids get silly, I think we're in a spot where the people who want to actually make robots do real work have to pull out as much as they can out of the microservices built to support the hype.
Yeah, and that's fair. And there's no reason we can't see better motion processing
Yep.
or planning kind of come out of this, or better control dynamics,
Or more efficient controls compute, for
controls.
example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That could be doable.
And with that being said, what are we going to talk about next week, Elliot?
We're going to talk about how hot it is in our new office.
Yes, it is very warm.
We need air.
And drinking 1 or 2 endangered beverages did not make it any cooler.
Oh, so we'll hopefully have a cooler episode next time.
Yeah, mostly because we'll just be cooler people. And with that,
I wouldn't bet
thank
on
you all so much for joining us at Automated. We'll talk to you soon.
See you next time.